Welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill. You share your source material with us, and we unpack every single implication. And today's case is really specific. Our whole mission is a targeted analysis of a fascinating cognitive concept, training the brain for language acquisition.
It really is an exceptional case study.
Yeah.
Because our source material, the entire foundation for this deep dive, it's just the title of a work. Just the title. Excerpts from How to Train Your Brain to Speak in English.
That's it, just the title. But those 8 words, they carry so much weight, an entire philosophy, really. So for you, the learner, our job here is to unpack the profound difference between learning English and training your brain to speak in English.
Exactly.
You have to figure out what fundamental shifts, psychologically and cognitively, that title demands from anyone trying to follow its methods.
It's such a critical framing. The moment you move from the idea of learning, which, so often just implies piling up data, like vocabulary lists, to the neurological concept of training, the entire approach has to change.
The whole game changes.
Yeah. The implication is that we're dealing less with a curriculum and much more with actually rewiring neural pathways.
And if we're talking about rewiring, then we have to talk about how the brain handles effort. Because traditional learning, right? The kind that's all about grammar rules, memorizing, analysis, that's what cognitive scientists call System 2 thinking.
Right.
It's slow, it's deliberate, and it requires a ton of cognitive effort. It just burns energy.
It burns so much energy. System 2 is, well, it's seated largely in our frontal lobes, the newest, most sophisticated parts of our brain. They're responsible for all that heavy lifting, problem solving, logical deduction, complex analysis. So when you're consciously trying to remember a grammar rule or figuring out a verb conjugation, you are deep in System 2.
Which is great for understanding the mechanics, I guess, but it's absolutely deadly for fluency.
Precisely. If speaking English stays a System 2 activity, it is always going to feel like hard work. It'll be slow, laborious, and just exhausting. The title, How to Train Your Brain, implies the real goal is to shift that entire operation speaking into System 1.
Okay, let's unpack that. System 1 thinking. What are we talking about here?
System 1 is the opposite. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's automatic. It requires almost no cognitive effort. It handles your reflexes, your habits, driving a car on an empty road or speaking your native language.
Oh, okay.
It's the part of your brain that operates below the level of conscious thought. When you tie your shoes, that's pure System 1. You don't think about the steps. Your brain just executes the skill.
So the mission of this brain training is to take the really complex act of producing English verbs, vocabulary, sentence structure, all of it, and automate it. Automate it so thoroughly that it moves from that analytical, high-effort frontal lobe into the reflexive, low-effort System 1 pathways.
That is the ultimate goal. Think about the energy cost. It's huge. When you're forced to rely on System 2, your brain is metabolically expensive. So if you're training the brain, you're essentially trying to reduce the metabolic drain of communication.
Which frees up your conscious attention for what actually matters.
For the meaning, not the mechanics.
Exactly. Okay, that brings us to, I think, the first major hurdle this kind of training has to deal with. The dreaded internal translator. This is the mechanism that keeps System 2 completely in charge.
That internal translator is the absolute nemesis of the language learner. It is the 4-step cognitive detour that just slows everything to a crawl. Let's just, trace that path for a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so English input comes in. Step 1. Your brain immediately translates it into your native language just to understand it. Step 2. You formulate your reply conceptually in your native language.
Yeah.
Step 3. You mentally translate that native language reply back into English. And then finally, Step 4, you speak the English out loud.
Wow. That is 4 steps of heavy cognitive processing just to say something like, the weather is nice today.
Yeah.
And you're constantly monitoring yourself for grammatical errors during that entire process.
And that monitoring is the slow, effortful System 2 analysis kicking in. Training the brain, therefore, has to be focused entirely on building a bridge that just bypasses Steps 1, 2, and 3.
A direct connection.
A straight wire from English input directly to the meaning center, and another straight wire from your intended meaning back out as English output. No detours.
So if the native language is essentially muted during this operation, the methods then must promote this direct association. You have to connect English words and phrases with concepts, with feelings, not with their native language equivalents.
Absolutely. We're talking about leveraging neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections. Every single time you successfully make that direct English to meaning connection, that pathway gets a little stronger. And every time you fall back on translation, you're just reinforcing the old slow detour.
This sounds way less like studying for a test and a lot more like physical therapy for the brain. It's about creating muscle memory, but for language. So what does this training philosophy demand from, your actual practice schedule?
It demands frequency and low stakes. That's the definition of distributed practice. If you're trying to train a neural pathway, the connections strengthen fastest when they're fired frequently, even if it's for a short time. The analogy here is not cramming for a final exam. It's not one 8-hour session once a week.
So instead of that,
it's practicing an instrument for 20 minutes every single day. You don't get good at the guitar by practicing for 5 hours just on Sunday. That just makes you tired and frustrated. You get good by forcing those neural circuits to fire daily. Short, high-frequency repetition. The source title implies a methodology that relies on that consistency.
I find this fascinating because the practical implication of high-frequency training is that you absolutely must accept low accuracy at the beginning.
You have to.
Because if you stop every time you make a mistake to analyze the error, you're pulling the whole activity right back into system two. You break the flow, you break the habit formation.
That is the essential tension. The training philosophy demands that fluency, that automatic flow, has to come before grammatical perfection. You have to condition the brain to just speak first.
But wait, hang on. If we're prioritizing high volume and speed over initial accuracy to build those System 1 pathways, aren't we running a huge risk of just cementing bad habits? What stops the brain from automating the wrong grammar? This is like the fear of every single conscientious learner.
That's an excellent challenge, and it's where the concept of training really offers a solution. While the initial goal is flow, the sheer volume of exposure that you need for true brain training through tons of high-speed listening and reading acts as a powerful subconscious error correction mechanism.
I mean, just input saturation.
Precisely. If you, the learner, are constantly exposed to correct English at speed, the brain's internal prediction mechanisms start to notice. They start to identify and flag the differences between your automated incorrect output and the constant stream of correct input.
So you're building the output muscles first.
You're prioritizing the structural strength of the pathway first, and then you're refining the data that travels across it with all that high-quality input.
That makes the process sound really iterative. It's like you build the road quickly, even if it's a bit bumpy, and then you go back and pave it with the good stuff.
Exactly. The training implies you have to accept errors as a temporary byproduct of establishing speed and automation. The moment you get obsessed with avoiding errors, you re-engage System 2, you slow down, and you completely lose the training effect.
Okay, let's pivot a little to the psychological shift that's required here, because I feel like this is often the biggest barrier for people. Moving from being a student who studies a language to a user who trains their brain, that demands a massive change in mindset.
It demands a shift from passive consumption to active production, and maybe more importantly, an internal identity shift. If you see yourself as a language trainee, you start to value consistency, endurance, and practice over just, intellectual understanding. It becomes less about knowing the definition of 1,000 words and more about making sure the 500 words you do know are instantly available, even when you're under pressure.
That speaks volumes about commitment. Training a complex skill like this requires habits that are actually integrated into your daily life. It has to move beyond the 2-hour class time.
This is where we get into habit formation. We know the brain responds incredibly well to repetition that's linked to a cue, so the methodology implied by the title would have to favor stacking language practice onto existing habits, like narrating your commute in English, translating traffic signs as you drive, or even just thinking through your grocery list in the target language.
It's that constant firing of the neural network. You're forcing the brain to see English as a tool for living, not just some subject for study.
And that consistency builds resilience. One of the biggest things that holds people back from fluency is the fear of failure, or that feeling of being overwhelmed when you have to say something complex. By keeping the practice sessions short, frequent, and task-based, like, say, rapid-fire Q&A drills, you just chip away at that psychological barrier. You're training your emotional response to speaking too.
So the training part is as much about psychological conditioning, making speaking feel normal and low stress, as it is about neurological reorganization.
Absolutely. We come right back to the System 1 concept. System 1 is also strongly linked to emotion and intuition. If every time you open your mouth to speak English you feel stress or anxiety or this need for perfection, you immediately drag the whole process back into that energy-draining System 2. Training aims to make speaking feel emotionally neutral or even positive.
So this entire deep dive, and remember, it's based solely on those 8 words, it reveals a methodology that has to be obsessed with 2 things: speed and flow. Anything that gets in the way of flow, so excessive analysis, translation, or a fear of making mistakes, it has to be seen as counterproductive to that primary goal, which is automation.
That is the essential conclusion. The philosophy implied by How to Train Your Brain is the pursuit of that low-effort subconscious competence. It's about moving the skill out of the realm of intellectual analysis and into the realm of neurological reflex.
Wow, this has been an incredibly focused deep dive, just analyzing the demands placed on our cognitive architecture when we shift from learning to training.
Oh,
We've established that the goal is System 1 automation, and it's achieved through frequent, rapid practice that bypasses that internal translator.
and this emphasis on immediate reflexive response, bypassing translation and minimizing analysis time, leads us to a final sort of provocative thought.
I'm ready for it. Lay it on us.
Okay, if the ultimate goal of brain training is automatic, immediate speaking response, this high-speed connection built through low-stakes repetition, what common, universally recommended language learning activity might actually hinder true brain training by reinforcing slow, written, analytical effort instead of rapid reflexive practice?
Ooh, that's a serious point to consider. For anyone designing their own schedule, right? Something that maximizes conscious effort and minimizes speed, that runs completely contrary to the idea of flow we've been talking about.
Indeed. It forces the brain right back into that System 2 mindset, that slow, effortful analysis, when the entire goal is to permanently assign the task of speaking to the fast, automatic system. It's a moment to really question if the habits you're building are for academic mastery or if they're for real-world fluency.
An excellent point for everyone to mull over. Thank you for sharing this single, really powerful title with us for this deep dive. Whether you're trying to automate a new language, a new coding skill, or you're just trying to be better informed, remember, sometimes the whole philosophy is right there in the framing. We'll see you next time.